then I will give the floor, first of all, to Luis Redondo, so Congressman for Salvador de Honduras, and he's the President of the National Congress, as I said already. You have the floor.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. We would like to thank the European Parliament for having us here on this historic occasion. It's an important opportunity for us to leave Honduras to try and build relations with other parliaments and to strengthen the institutions that were weakened in our country under the last 13 years after a coup d'etat, which led to poverty. It led to large groups of migrants leaving the country, and we had the institutions of our country in destructive criminal hands. There was electoral fraud. Our country was compromised, our resources as well. Energy contracts were given out that did not comply with the right criteria and were supposedly approved via the Congress. The Congress of Honduras is meant to be the Congress of the people. I think it is the first time since we had our constitution that it is being led by the parties who've traditionally led it, and that we don't have a party from the traditional parties. I think we are seeing something in Honduras that isn't really tangible. We are creating a new system under Xiomara Castro, our new female president. It means that the people, the citizens of Honduras, can have trust in the government, in the president again. And we are doing what we can to assist that process from the side of the Congress. So we are working in tandem. We are creating an agenda that has been built to counter the last 13 years. So we had a lot of decrees that have to be reformed, that have to be eliminated, decrees that were imposed on the legal order of our country that facilitated drug trafficking, that facilitated corruption, and that led to impunity. We had a criminal code that was put in place, and it was known as the Code of Impunity. And there were lots of things that were eliminated from the criminal code, such as money laundering. And this was eliminated in the transitory articles of our law as well. So we had companies that were involved in laundering of assets, in laundering of money. We had Orlando Hernandez, who was held in New York, who came out of Honduras, who was wanted for electoral fraud. And there's going to be a lot of people who will be brought before justice for drug trafficking as well. We also saw the large internal migrations, people leaving the country. What we want to see is justice. There were a huge amount of cities where we called for justice. We also were trying to tackle corruption because there was no trust in the judicial system, in the criminal code, in the legal system. So we had this MACHI, the mission to support the fight against corruption and impunity, to try and tackle that. But we know what happened with the MACHI. But this is what we wanted to tackle corruption. But it takes more than laws. There has to be strong institutions and commitment. So that is why we are here. This is why we are building agreements with different Latin American countries to harmonize laws, to work with different countries to see what we can implement, to see how we can strengthen institutions and legislative power. It is difficult to say, but when we came to the National Congress, we found it to be empty. And when I say empty, there was absolutely nothing. There wasn't financial data, accounts, archives. Everything was taken, the computers. There was simply no historical register of any of the laws, of the decrees. Now, this is something that could have been a setback for us, but we took that as an opportunity to start afresh. So we are beginning again, and we're here visiting you, visiting this country, visiting this parliament to say to the world that Honduras wants strong institutions. A change in government doesn't change the rules of the game. We're going to have strong government with new ideas. We're not going to destroy the existing mechanisms in our country, such as our mechanisms to tackle fraud. We're not going to see a culture of impunity. For us, that's extremely important. So when we move on from here, when we leave the European Parliament, we will come back with hope from the bilateral visits that we've had. There will be follow-ups here, but we can take that message of hope back to our people. This feeling of hope that was born once we had our first female president in Honduras. We have been working with the international community to tackle corruption, but that's not the only thing we want. We want to strengthen the rights for our indigenous peoples as well. We want to deal with the legal matters that were ignored in the by the last government to strengthen the rights, the land rights of the indigenous people, and also strengthen the rights of women as well. I am proud to be president of a Congress. We have a new draft law looking at the Supreme Court that represents the people, and there will be 50% of women, 50% of men in the court. This will mean that a lot of crimes that were taken out of the criminal code, the code that we called the Code of Impunity, for example, crimes such as violence against women, we can now strengthen the penalties for these crimes. There are a lot of challenges ahead of us. When we have seen the success in other countries tackling corruption, we always wondered why the world was fighting so hard against drug trafficking, against terrorism, but why they didn't deal with corruption more. Corruption is more deadly in our country than drug trafficking or terrorism. So I would call on the world for us to persist in tackling corruption, in those who are involved in corruption. We should do this in the same way that we would hunt down terrorists or drug traffickers. In my country, there are thousands of children who have gone to the border with the United States. They had to leave the country due to corruption. We don't even know who their parents are. We don't know how to get these children back. And they are now in institutions in the States. They're a long way from their families. We don't want to see these children living like this, or these families in a country they don't even know. So I think we all need to work together here. We need to work together through the agreements that we create. And we want to say very clearly that Honduras is open and willing to work with the European Parliament. We have a forum with the presidents of Latin America and the Caribbean, and I think we can really build a success story here together. We have the opportunity, and we see the war in Ukraine as well, which is changing the balance, and I think we can create a new reality here. Thank you.
Gracias.